So once we gain acceptance of a fact or something like that, and it becomes part of your worldview, then that you close off that end of seeking, of questioning. You've got your answer. And the human tendency is to defend that answer against all comers because we found the answer. The funny thing about it is a lot of time the answers shift over time, and we don't recognize that because we grow. We're not the same person. No matter who you are, you're not the same person you were even 3 years ago. You're a completely brand new person. You have an entirely new overlay on your thoughts. Just think about how you used to live, how you used to think, how you used to act pre-Trump, if you are involved in politics at all. If that sways you in any way, fashion, or form, the mainstream media and politics, that whole Hollywood scene. Just look at the tone of our nation, how crazy it's gotten just over the past 3 years. It's simple. Everybody's talking about it. It's easy to see. And that's why Trump was such a blessing for this country, because I think he broke the Constitution. And so it's time to make it right or make a new one. And but if everybody gets stuck going down rabbit holes for, just working on one tree in the whole forest that is our country, then we'll never get anything accomplished. Because right now we've created corporations as an apex predator, and they're just getting bigger. I think the greatest absurdity in the entire history of the world is the trillionaire. Yeah, I think it's time. I think everybody can agree that it's time for an upper limit because, once you get 25 ice cream scoops on your ice cream cone, just how many more do you need? Serious. I mean, there's got to be an upper limit because we've already proven in our country that there's no lower limit. There is only the upper limit of how much wealth can you store, how much control can you take, how many people can you influence. And we've got to return in our thinking in our country to the idea that a human being is a sovereign person. And the fact that many people won't even know what that means is absolute concrete proof. So when we start, say life out of high school, adult life, we're invested with a certain set of ideals that have been given to us, whether we wanted them or not. Part of that comes from our learning environment, and part of that comes from our home environment. Everybody knows this, but when our parents are placed in impossible situations, that affects the younger generation. When they see no hope for the future because their family has suffered tragedy after loss after loss, then you're looking at the erosion of the very foundations of our country. Human beings are sovereign beings. You are a sovereign being. You have every right to exist. You have every right to be able to work for your own survival. And you should not have to spend 2/3 of your waking energy just trying to comply with massive expenditures. And by that I mean just look at your cell phone bill. Look at all the additional fees and taxes that are all on there, and you think the company pays that, but they actually make money off of collecting that and paying it on to the government. They get to charge a fee for that. There's so much BS in there just to scrape all of the cream away from your milk, your gallon of milk, without even replacing it with water. And that's essentially what keeps happening, because the amount of rules that are placed upon an individual, and there's no guide, there's no help, there's only punishment at every turn. No matter what interaction you have with the government, there is that very real and present threat of becoming criminalized or villainized or whatever you call it, because that is just our bureaucracies have taken the form and the ethics of a corporation, with a twist. They're not bound to they're bound to the exercise of power rather than the dollar and the amount of influence that it brings. So everything they do is to protect that bureaucracy, and occasionally a very small percentage of their budget is spent actually fixing whatever it was they're supposed to fix. Now, there are, of course, exceptions. Everything is there for, all the institutions that we have are there for a reason. And I'm not saying that they could function so much better. If we really wanted to fix our country, then we should start with the bureaucracies, and you should start with the cash flow right there. Every September, I believe, is the end of the fiscal year for every government agency in existence. And if they don't spend all that money they got by then they are afraid of being hauled before Congress to justify the big budget when they didn't spend it all last year. It's called the use it or lose it principle. And it's one of the most expensive and destructive principles in our government. If you want to cut the deficit, you can cut it in just a couple of years. I remember when, 25 years ago, plus, whatever, when I was in the Navy, I was supply officer for my organization, and I remember the warrant. He went and told me to order a certain part, and I had to ask him about it. I'm like, well, what the hell am I getting here, boss? And he's like, well, that's a $50,000 circuit card, and we don't need it, and we probably won't get it. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, but that covers the rest of our budget. And that's when he explained all of that to me, the use it or lose it principle. He said, if we don't spend all of that, if we don't need more for next year, then when we do need that much money to run, because, if an organization is inactive or less active, it's not going to have the same needs as when it needs to become more active. So they're of the thought that we have to keep this bureaucracy strong at all times and keep it fully funded at all times. So we're going to buy a whole bunch of paper and a whole bunch of pens or a caterer or whatever it takes. Depends. And that takes place in the military. It takes place in absolutely every phase of government life on a yearly cycle. And there's how many government organizations are currently employed, open and employed between Monday and Friday right now, just to govern your single life as an American. So every single one of those has certain needs. And, I remember people in the government claiming that inflation doesn't exist. I mean, come on, guys. Really, how much are we supposed to swallow? Those who pay attention to more than just one person feel like you're drowning. And a lot of people turn away from politics the same way and for the same exact reasons that people turn away from God, from religion, from the pursuit of the Creator. Even the idea that few people will understand what it means to consider yourself a sovereign individual is maybe it's a new word we need to start using in our language, because everybody is has a right and a necessity and a purpose to being here. And if we as human beings can't associate our ideals for the benefit of humanity, if only for the purpose of selfish purposes, if that's the only way to elevate it, then perhaps we need a restructuring in our alignment of our thinking. Maybe we need to program our ears a little bit differently. And maybe we need to quit listening to everybody's opinion and quit taking the first answer you hear as plausible. Pause a bit. Sometimes every time you peel an onion, you gotta keep peeling, and you gotta keep looking past the tears every single time until you go scorched earth on your own beliefs and rebuild from the ground up. You won't understand. But when you become invested in an idea, such as this, I have a concept of creation that's probably pretty basic, pretty simple, and our connection to that. I believe that you can find God in the power of creation. That is what I believe God is the power of creation. And we're already connected to it. It's that belief that we're given that we don't deserve it, that He doesn't want us because we're not good enough. That whole fiction right there, the original sin, that's one of the main things that I wish to discuss and dismantle. And I hope that you, as the listener, will give me an opportunity to prove that